trade organizations, associations, and free trade agreements. We will briefly try to cover this. This is a very large field. So we start with WTO, World Trade Organization, which is still continuing, not that much importance, but set up in 50s under the umbrella of UN, that is United Nations. The idea being that the trade between the nations should be free and there should not be controls over it, because theoretically speaking, more the nations trade, the better they become and more prosperous the societies are. At that time, of course, those who were ahead in technology and economy, which was again G7, that is US and others, Western European countries, were very much in favor of that because they were ahead of the others, so they wanted the markets to be open for their products. China incidentally did not become the member of WTO, or rather was not allowed to become member of the WTO till 1971. And once it became the member, it opened its markets, and also it went into other markets and has become the largest trading nation. Some of the regional associations came up for having free trade among themselves. EU is an example. That means European Union, starting with 3 members, starting with the steel community for free trade of steel. They became an overall economic community, and then went ahead and became EU, where they opened up for services as well as travel without passports and so on. And they developed their own currency also called the Euro currency. ASEAN came up, which is the association of the Southeast Asian nations, with the same idea. It's like the Indonesia and the Philippines and Thailand and Vietnam. And slowly they reduced the tariffs amongst themselves. And in turn, these associations have agreements with the others. For example, when UK withdrew from the European Union 3 years ago after the referendum in the country, it's called Brexit, Brexit, British exit. They have been negotiating their free trade agreements or trade agreements individually with each one of those 30 countries. Now that becomes quite cumbersome because the interests of different nations are different depending on what they make, what is the quality they make, what is the price at which they make it, etc., etc. So while they were member of the EU, similar things applied, because EU might apply tariffs to the outsiders, but which are the same for every country, and when it differs, it differs. Few terms which are very often and easily used: FOB, that is free on board. That means the price is quoted either at the factory gate, or it is that we will take it and put it on the ship. Up to that, the expenditure will be ours and it will be FOB. Then new term has emerged during the Ukrainian sanctions called dark shipping. Now, dark shipping is that they are not the ships which are registered with an European or American registry or are insured by their companies, which are basically, there is a group in Netherlands and there is a group in London which insure these ships, and they have their own insurance mechanisms. So Russia has developed its own insurance company. They as well bought about 150 ships of their own last year to be able to send their stuff. But the Europeans call it dark shipping. Otherwise, it is the same. Ships are there. And now we come to some other associations like BRICS. It was formed about 14 years ago now. But last 2 years, 3 years, it has become quite active. B stands for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China. and S for South Africa. Current presidency is coming to South Africa, so they are trying to involve a lot of African nations. Now, this has not yet become a full-fledged economic union. Also, there are differences between China and India. China also has a Shanghai Cooperation Organization, to which we will come, called SCO. And but a number of countries have applied or are in the process of applying, which will be decided at the time of the annual meeting in August 23. And these include Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, two oil-producing nations, Jamaica, Algeria, and so many new names keep on coming up. We have put these links there, what is their desire to come, and so on and so forth. But there is a likelihood of this group becoming large. Even now, BRICS has got 40% of the population, 30% of the area, and 30% of the GNP of the world. This is bigger than European Union. Also, buying of Russia oil, which was sanctioned by the G7 nations, has been there by BRICS countries. So BRICS countries have not bothered about the sanctions put by USA and Western Europe. BRICS has already set up a National Development Bank, which is like World Bank, with $100 billion of equity, $20 billion being put by each one of these nations, and has advanced loans of $50 billion already. And these are for infrastructure, with emphasis on the newer things like climate change and sustainability, and so on. This is also in competition with the funding of BRI projects, which are infrastructure projects, but that funding is by the private or government Chinese banks, and they have come for some criticism called debt trap, that organizations or countries rather, like Sri Lanka, are not able to pay up the debts, and therefore they fall in a debt trap, and the asset then goes back to one of the Chinese companies. Then we have SAARC, grouping of the South Asian countries. This has been a non-starter, partly because Pakistan and India don't get along, and therefore nothing of great use happens. We have LATAM, the Latin American Association, which is actually led by the USA. That has also kind of gone down in importance. And digitalization has something to do with it also. And then we have the free trade agreements. India has to negotiate, therefore, free trade agreements with a lot of nations. Recently, our Minister of Commerce, Mr. Piyush Goyal, criticized the FTA with Korea, saying that the Korean cars have taken away a lot of share and they have made a lot of money, and they have therefore taken advantage of the free trade agreement. Well, the counter to that is that if there were more components people could have supplied, they would have got it. There is no restriction they put on taking our products to Korea. We have to have relevant products to take to Korea. Can we take a smartphone? Well, they have a good one, Samsung of their own, big factory. Can we take our cars there? Well, they're open. So, free trade agreement is for the free movement of things, but you should be able to compete well. Now, we have under negotiation a free trade agreement with UK. Similar issues have come up there. The Australian Prime Minister is right now here, and there has been a reference to AUKUS, AKUS. UKS, yes. Australia, UK, and US have a defense pact, And the Prime Minister of Australia recently announced at ASEAN that they will be buying 4 nuclear-powered submarines from USA in the 30s. And so these are many of the associations and so on which work goes on. Now, the US, on the other hand, after trying to open up the markets and benefiting from it, has started putting sanctions. One would be surprised to know that the US has sanctions on 25 countries, and they vary in different levels. So, to the China, they have said that UI can't come, semiconductors, nothing, technology related to semiconductors and any other advanced technology, US companies cannot supply to them. Russia have had the most severe sanctions, money frozen, large quantity. Companies in Russia from US and Europe asked to withdraw from there. Of course, blocking gas and oil, putting a constraint on the price of the oil, and the list goes on. And also, they try to put secondary sanctions on countries like Iran, supposedly supplying drones. If somebody supplies drones to Ukraine, there is nothing wrong. Somebody supplies drones to Russia, then there is a problem because they are the hegemon. So, on one side, the business starts becoming open and open. As I said, with digitization, it is more open, but there also, for example, TikTok and Huawei's communication equipment has been blocked. So one has to keep on studying this in terms of the impact on one's own country. Also, one has to be prepared to negotiate these things well. That is the managerial job. It is all right to say on the podium that yes, we are also for the free trade, but actually we then go next day on the podium saying that if we can't compete, then it is not a good idea. So at this stage, we will close it. We will be looking at BRICS, how it develops. BRICS is likely to develop because Russia is very interested in developing it, the financial system under that. Of course, it will be able to provide military hardware after Ukraine conflict is over, and China is of course wanting to still keep the markets open because China is quite confident that it competes well. Not only that, under the BRI they have developed a lot of infrastructure, a lot of ports have been bought, and for whole of the Eurasia they have a railway line now which has become operational. Now therefore this is parts of China, but certainly from Shanghai to Turkey, Istanbul, there is a complete line, railway line we're talking about. Russia has opened up new pipelines to China, from Sakhalin, for example, or Power of Siberia too. And people doesn't realize that how much work they had done in laying these pipelines from place like Siberia. Very difficult to work there. And to different parts of Europe and now to Japan and China and Iran. They wanted to do it via Afghanistan to India also, via Pakistan, but again the politics. This is where the geopolitics comes in, and the trade should be such that we should realize that these are long-term decisions and long-term advantages. Buying something on spot market, today it is at $40, tomorrow it is $140, is not good for countries who don't have that much of foreign exchange. We have now good reserves, but most of it is now coming from the ITS services and all that. For some reason, if there is a problem, we will have a serious problem in terms of foreign exchange. So there are 2 or 3 parameters. One, we look at government, whether it has a current account deficit. Then we have to see whether foreign exchange, how is it balanced. So we will do a link there where we will give again a dynamic graphic of the foreign exchange reserves of India. And For each one of these things, we can give associated links, but this discussion is an introductory discussion to the